Good morning, Dan and Amy. So the 7 sailors that were killed, 7 American sailors killed in that collision between the USS Fitzgerald, a Navy destroyer, and a Japanese cargo ship have been identified. They were identified yesterday. It's a very curious incident. You have Admiral Joseph Okine describing what happened.
So the water flow was tremendous, and so there wasn't a lot of time in those spaces that were open to the sea. And as you can see now, the ship is still listing. 3 compartments were severely damaged, 1 machinery room, and 2 berthing areas. Berthing areas for 116 of the crew, and also the ship's skipper's cabin as well.
And we talked to a military intelligence expert early in the show, Colonel Cedric Layton, who talked about just how tight those quarters are and how difficult it would be for those sailors to escape. Obviously, it was if the kind of breach occurred that did occur with the water coming in as fast as it did. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Admiral James Stavridis. I hope I got that right. People always mispronounce my last name, so I try to be sensitive. Like Prost, Frost. They never Proft, So if I'm mispronouncing, I want to be corrected. But Admiral Stavridis is the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. He's also author of the new book, Sea Power: The History and Geopolitics of the World's Oceans. Admiral, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to be with both of you today, Dan and Amy, here in Chicago.
Did I got Stavridis? Is that right?
Very, very close. Stavridis. Is how we say it, like a reed, like a thin reed.
Okay, Admiral Stavridis, got it. And Sea Power: The History and Geopolitics of the World's Oceans is your new book. Why don't we start in the Sea of Japan? And how should we understand how the USS Fitzgerald was not able, with all of the equipment it has, the radar and the detection systems, how you could have a slow-moving cargo ship hit it like it did, causing so much damage and death?
Yeah, you were just doing the traffic report here on the station. Think of it as kind of a 16-lane highway. The traffic's moving both ways. In relative terms to ships, it's actually moving at fairly high speed. And the difference is at sea, Dan, is that there really are no lanes. It's just an open field, if you will. So the ships move in and out. My guess is what happened here is that tanker, which was ahead of the Navy ship, moving in the same direction, it appears that it suddenly reversed course. We don't know why. The investigation will tell us. And you'd actually have very little time to react, just like you would if a car in front of you on the freeway suddenly turned around and was coming back at you. Not a lot of reaction time. I do want to underline the heroic work of the crew in saving that ship. It easily could have sunk.
Oh, could have sunk easily, yes. But quickly, the cargo ship, 30,000 tons, owned by a company out of the Philippines. Do you see this as an attack, or was this an accident, or is it too soon to tell?
I think it's too soon to tell. To me, it looks like a tragic accident more than any kind of deliberate activity. But these are huge ships. Think of this as kind of 2 buildings colliding out there. The tanker was 3 times the size of the Navy ship. And by the way, I commanded the sister ship to USS Fitzgerald, identical in every regard. And to see that tanker crush in the side of it right where the captain's cabin is, it deprived the ship of the captain's leadership at a critical moment. I think that's, again, speaks to the heroic efforts of this crew to save the ship.
And this is, I don't want to be Monday morning quarterbacking here, but just for, us non-seafaring folk, if you were in that situation, since you've commanded the sister ship, if you were in that situation and and assuming that they understood what the cargo ship had done, was there any evasive action that they could have taken, any communication that would be going on to avoid the collision that occurred?
In those last few seconds, as you're on the bridge of the destroyer and you finally see that those lights are actually coming at you after having been going away from you all evening, or suddenly headed at you, you have a very brief period of time. You have a radio that all ships are up on, a circuit you can call. You can flash your lights at the ship. You're going to bring all your engines online, and you're going to throw your rudder over hard, and I'm sure they did all those things, but unfortunately they reacted too late, and this is what the investigation is going to unpackage for us.
And the USS Fitzgerald, their mission there is to, intercept any missiles shot by North Korea, correct?
That's a big part of their mission, absolutely, Amy. They also do general sea control. They're a deterrent force there against not only North Korean missiles, but North Korean submarines and aircraft. The ship has capability to defend against missiles, but also a great deal of offensive capability. It also has a full bag of Tomahawk missiles that can be used if necessary. Multi-mission destroyer.
Picking up on the theme of your book, Sea Power, about the geopolitics of the world's oceans, the Navy's mission in the 21st century, in these times, in present day, North Korea, that's one example, in their attempt to advance their nuclear program, patrolling the South China Sea to keep trading lanes open. Give us some of the kind of salient missions the Navy is charged with accomplishing and their readiness to do so, since kind of military readiness was a big part of the conversation in the presidential campaign.
Absolutely. You've done a nice job outlining Asia. Let's turn to the Mediterranean Sea. You might have read about the Syrian jet that was shot down by a U.S. fighter. That was a Navy fighter that was operating off the carrier George W. Bush in the eastern Mediterranean. Our sea power in the Mediterranean, the Black Sea, is there to deter Russia, to punish Syria, to deter Iran. So a great deal of activity around the Middle East is maritime. And then thirdly, let's go up north and look at the Arctic, where Russia is building icebreakers, expanding their military operations. Our cruisers, destroyers, and our submarines in particular up there are a real deterrent against further Russian adventurism. In terms of the fleet, it's too small. The Obama administration allowed it to atrophy. We're down to 275 ships. Under President Reagan, we had 600.
Ooh.
In the Cold War, we had nearly 1,000. We're down to 275. Trump administration correctly has pledged to build that up to an appropriate minimum number, which would probably be about 350. So we've got some work to do to recover.
And just up north, like the Arctic Circle, you got to make sure that you can provide crabbing lanes for all the deadliest catch guys, too. I want to make sure that show stays on the air.
Yeah, it is a great show. And that's actually a pretty serious point. We're seeing a great deal of competition, geopolitical competition between countries about fish stocks. China is extremely aggressive in pushing many of our allies and edging toward U.S. waters in that regard. So the deadliest catch, they may need to arm those ships.
Do you have confidence in President Trump to build up the number of fleets, to go back to the Reagan era of 600?
I do. I think they are led by Secretary of Defense, former General Jim Mattis, close personal friend of mine, a bit older than I am, but someone I've known throughout my career. He's got the right sight picture. I think 350 is probably the number. The difference is that the ships are more capable today, so you don't have to have that full bag of 600. If we had 350, we could cover the globe very effectively. General Mattis is on track to do that. My sense is President Trump fully supports that.
To add another 75 ships to the fleet, what kind of time horizon would that require?
I think it'll take us 7 to 10 years to do that. It takes a long time to build ships.
Right.
But the good news is we still have an advantage over Russia and China. The bad news is they are building also. Russia will add 100 ships over the next 3 years. So we've got to get on this, and I talk about that a fair amount in the book, Sea Power. He
is Admiral James Stavridis. He is a former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. The book, as he just mentioned, Sea Power, The History and Geopolitics of the World's Oceans. Admiral, thanks so much for joining us. Good luck with the book.
Thanks a lot, Dan and Amy.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen.